agreed to take a few questions. So the floor is open for.
I want to bring this to the attention of the NSA. There are, as you were in Israel, you will probably know there are about 1,000 Indian graves at Haifa from the 2 cavalry regiments of Allenby who took part in Haifa and then on to Damascus. The mayor of Haifa is coming here in September. You know the Teen Murti, the statues are of the 3 cavalry regiments. So he's coming here to honor the graves. I hope the government of India will take note of that. The other thing I don't think many people are aware of, an Indian battalion was part of Monash's forces in Turkey at Gallipoli. There were a number of casualties. I think the graves are there somewhere. I think we should honor our soldiers who gave their lives, but we do nothing about it. The Israelis are looking after their graves, also the graves in Jerusalem. I appeal to the NSA to do something regarding honoring our dead who took part in World War II, and of course the ones that later, but particularly I'm mentioning World War I. Thank you.
Just to clarify, the Commonwealth War Graves Commission looks after the graves in what in World War I at that time was all of Palestine. And we do actually honor them. I mean, I remember visiting them myself. I remember taking Indian ministers who used to come to the area, to the graves. But I think what's planned is a very large commemoration for the World War I war dead, especially next year, which is the centenary. And I think we're in the process of talking to all the countries involved, and that involves Australia as well. It involves others for Gallipoli. And I think we should have some clarity on how we do this, because to have everybody off on his own trying to do this all at the same time will be pretty chaotic. So just to assure you that A, we know the problem, B, we have tried to honor our own war dead from the First World War and subsequently, and see that we will be doing something about the centenary, and I think that will be an occasion where we can mark this suitably. That I know nothing about. I'll find out. You told me please note, so I've noted. Thanks.
General retired Dr. Adil Suleiman from Egypt. Sir, I have one question. How do you see the future of the relationship between India and Egypt, especially economically, politically, also for the issues of the security and peace in the region?
I think we've had a steady exchange with Egypt, but I think the next big landmark will be, we have, as you know, invited President Morsi to visit India, and he's likely to come next month. In the course of preparing that, we've been looking at the various aspects of the relationship that you mentioned. It's been a relationship where clearly we have very similar security interests, we have very similar approaches, but we need to actually operationalize much of what we are doing. And that is the process that we're engaged in now, to try and see how we broaden and deepen the actual practice of the relationship. In terms of exchanging opinions, assessments, understandings, in those terms it's going on steadily. You know, our foreign minister went last year. We've had a series of exchanges. Our election commission also was tried to help in the conduct of the elections last year. We've tried a series of exchanges. But I think your basic point that we need to actually see how we can deepen this relationship is correct, and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that talk. It certainly explained a number of policy actions that you have taken, because one of the themes of this conference in the last couple of days has been that perhaps India does not have a Middle East policy, and I'm very thankful to you for providing that explanation. I have a very short question. What is India's policy stand precisely on Syria, on the Syrian crisis? And how do you really manage your relationship with Tehran and Ankara in Moscow in the light of the Syrian crisis?
I didn't understand the second part. I mean, I can...
Because they've got conflicting positions on Syria. I mean, Turkey is supporting the opposition, whereas Russia, Moscow and Tehran are supporting the Assad regime. How do you manage your relationship with these countries in the light of that? But first of all, I would like to really know what is your policy
what
standard.
India thinks. I can't speak for what the others think and whether, what they choose to do about that. As far as we are concerned, it's quite clear. We have always felt that the issues in Syria need to be dealt with through a political process which is led by the Syrians themselves. That this is not, which is why I said, we cannot impose solutions from the outside. No matter how much goodwill there may be in the international community, the results of external intervention, so far at least, have not proved in history and empirically in the region, have not proved either stable or sustainable or very positive. And that, I think, is our basic approach. Which is why we supported Kofi Annan. We also support today Mr. Brahimi's efforts, because we think that the only way really is to get everybody around the table and to let Syrians decide their own future together. How likely is that? That's a matter of debate. And what the nature of that future should be, I think part of the problem is that we've all got ahead of ourselves. Too many great powers were busy saying what the solution was before they even had a route towards it, and without consulting the Syrian people at all. So you now have this disconnect between a set of several alternate visions of what the solution is. Exactly what you alluded to when you said that great powers have different policies. And now nobody has a clear route towards it. And it actually complicates your attempt to actually get all the Syrians themselves to make their solution. Now we as India must recognize that there are limits to our capability to contribute. We will help, but we think the real need is for the outside world to step back and let the Syrians sort it out politically and to arrive at it peacefully among themselves. We're not sure that condition has been created yet, and frankly, it's very hard to see how we can do that. I mean, I'd be very interested in what you think. What do you...
Well, thank you very much. I was very much interested in your view about India's stand on this crisis. I mean, I do have my own views, but perhaps I wouldn't want to take up the precious time that's available to other members of the audience. They could ask questions from you, but perhaps afterwards, if you have a few minutes.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a large number of people who have asked, wanting to ask questions, so let's be brief. So next is Admiral Roy.
My question is about the Indian Ocean. I have two observations and same questions. We have built up a strong navy, regional navy here, and we are hanging from the Himalayas. On both sides we have got shipbuilding and topside, etc. My question is, soft power. We're not using our soft power like hospital ships. Now you take America's hospital ships that goes to South American countries every year, and now China has got over 12 or 14 hospital ships coming to the Indian Ocean, to Seychelles and all that every year, and India has none. Although we have got so much of hospitals and things in India, we have no hospital ships. We're not using our soft power to get friendship with the countries around us. That is one question. Second one is about the South China Sea. We're going to discuss it later. We have a lot of interest there. And the question is, the Indian Navy will already now can look after our own interest in the South China Seas. And recently there was a communique by you in the papers whether we should send our ships, have them based in Vietnam or Singapore, etc. Look after our own ONGC's interest the South China Sea. Thank you.
Well, to deal with the second question first, nobody has asked us to send ships to protect our interests. This is not our waters. I think we have a primary job here at home for the Navy, and I think the Navy's tasks are quite clearly defined. I think that was a hypothetical question raised in a press conference where I think the questioner sort of led on to this conclusion. But the fact is, nobody's asked you to, and nobody's actually considered this. I don't think that's a real possibility today. But on the hospital ships, it's a very good idea. I think you're quite right, because I know that a large number of people from the region do come to India for treatment, but that's in hospitals on land, and maybe it's sensible if... So I'll pass the idea on to people who could actually implement it very happily. I'd do that.
Thank you, sir. So yesterday's in deliberations, it came out that while the Gulf looks at India with great future, so does Israel. But amongst them, especially on the Palestinian issue, there was great disagreement. Can India play any role in narrowing down these disagreements and bringing them around on a common platform?
Ask them.
This is Horimoto from Japan, and my question is regarding this so-called quadrilateral approach among the US, Japan, India, and Australia. And then in the past, this idea is floating and sinking. But basically, what I feel is Indian government is very cautious, somehow engaging, somehow not engaging. So could you give some hint to know what will be the Indian government action or ideas towards this quadrilateral approach?
I think
the background of
if you look at it, since the idea was first mentioned, now almost 8 years ago, I think we have been consistent in whatever, whether you say caution or not, because frankly we didn't know what the idea amounted to. We didn't know what the content of it was, we didn't know what it was meant to achieve, and we didn't know what it demanded of us by way of commitments and so on. Other members of the quadrilateral have either been very positive, very negative, some have said no, then same people have then later changed their mind and said yes, then gone back to no. So if you look at it, there has never been a point of time in the last 7 years where all four have said together, simultaneously, that we have one idea which we all agree on. So the point of actually defining the idea of the quadrilateral has never arisen actually, so far. Each one might have different ideas, but this is, different dream, same bed. We're all in Asia, but I don't think we know what animal we're talking about. So if you ask me, is India cautious? Yes, we're cautious because frankly we don't know what we are talking about here.
At the same time, Indian government will not be forthcoming to do something.
We have excellent relations with each of the countries that you mentioned. We cooperate with them across the whole spectrum, whether it is, politically, economically, in defense, you name it, we cooperate together. But I think the idea of a quadrilateral, nobody has actually said what it means, what is it going to do, what is it going to add to what we have already, and what does it mean in practice. So really, I'm not sure what to answer.
Thank you very much.
Ranjit,
thank you. So my very brief esoteric question. India's economic rise and India's strategic rise, as a watcher, I'm seeing its envelope increase. In fact, when you were in China, the Navy chief made a statement which you know all about. My worry, I can see a prediction India's economy by 2025, and I'm confident I may not be there, but it will be number 3 economy in the world. Mr. Chidambaram has promised us 9% growth. But I'm very worried about our strategic growth, sir, because Very briefly, we don't have a CDS. We are the largest importer of arms in the world. We have a huge strategic envelope. But could you, as you entered your speech, you said you are more looking after the short term. We need defense industry, exports. If the two, economic and strategic ambitions of India for the future younger generations, could you just comment, how will we achieve it, sir?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that we are only looking after the short term. I don't think that's what I said. I said the trick is really to navigate the short-term challenges to arrive at a better, positive future. That's what I said. I didn't say we're only looking at the short term. Secondly, I think in strategic terms, if you look at India's situation, you look at where we were 20 years ago, where we were 10 years ago, where we are today. I don't know where we'll be in 10 years. I mean, you are very clear. Obviously, you seem to have a very positive trajectory in mind. But whatever it is, the trend line is positive. So I don't think you need to worry so much. And from what you yourself said, I don't think you can draw the inference that somehow India cannot manage its strategic situation. We've managed in a period of considerable, when the world was relatively easy to deal with, we've managed when the world was relatively hard to deal with as well. So I think you need to take one step back when you look at this. And so don't worry so much.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, over here, sir. Shri from Times Now. Sir, you're National Security Advisor, and you've been seeing what has been in the media in these last 2 or 3 days. As
I'm
NSA,
not going to comment on that.
Sir, as NSA,
that's
not the point, sir.
Yeah.
As NSA, what impact does the role of these rogue arms traders have on national security?
That's not the topic of the seminar.
Sir, there were many other questions that were not on topic, sir. Hospital ships was not the topic of the seminar.
Okay, please, Sanjeev.
Thank you, sir.
Sanjeev, I think Shrinjoy has tried several times to get me on record. So this has a history. This has gone on for many years. One day he'll succeed, but not today.
Thank you, sir. I am Sanjeev Srivastava from IDSA. So my question is related to U.S. troops withdrawal from Afghanistan by end of 2014. In that scenario, sir, what role do you see for the regional players and in particular the nations of the West Asia? Thank you, sir.
Well, I think we're at the stage today where all the regional powers are actually consulting with each other and with the Afghan government on how the future is going to evolve. Because I think we all have an interest in a smooth transition, and smooth transitions not just in terms of the security within Afghanistan and around it, but also in terms of the politics within Afghanistan and about how we reconcile the various interests which are coming to the fore. I think that's something that all the regional powers are discussing among ourselves. Where that will result, I think it's too early to say. I think it's still a work in progress. For 3 reasons. One is, I think the primary decision on many of these issues has to be within Afghanistan itself. And that's not very clear. Secondly, I think for the regional powers themselves, I think what their concerns have been articulated when we met at various fora, whether it was London, whether it was Moscow. I mean, we've laid down broad criteria, but how those criteria translate into the actual practice of politics and security in Afghanistan and around it is still not clear. Thirdly, there are no real security structures and architectures that are in place regionally to deal with this today. So even if we do agree on things, how do you actually start implementing it remains a problem. So the short answer is that it's still a work in progress, and it's something that I think you will see a lot of work in the next few months, in the next year or so. I thought we made it quite clear right at that time itself, when this started, 2.5 years ago. I think we made it quite clear that we stood on the side of the people, that we understood and supported the fact that people have the right to determine their own futures and determine who leads them and what they do. I think that was made quite clear, and even at, I think, a year and a half ago, Prime Minister standing in the General Assembly of the United Nations said so as well. I think where we, as I said earlier, I think where we draw the line is at external interference in these processes, which are primarily domestic processes. And I think that is where I think the problem arises. Obviously, I mean, we are now at a stage where, frankly, you can start drawing conclusions in a conference about what kinds of consequences follow, how we need to deal with it. But I think our support for the idea of for the democratic aspirations of the people in the region, I think, has been consistent and has been expressed throughout. I don't want any misunderstanding on that. That's strong.
I'm Dr. Shamil Faraj from Kuwait. I'm not sure if in India it is understood that the dynamics of security between the GCC and Iran has changed dramatically since the arrival of the Muslim Brotherhood into power in Egypt. Now, if we can describe the relationship between the GCC and Egypt today as quite on a standstill. There is quite a distrust. Egypt is not looked upon today as with confidence as the counterweight it used to be in Arabian Peninsula affairs historically, not just with Iran, but prior to that, over centuries. We are fully aware of the development of the Indian Navy that we are going to witness within 2017, a serious deployment of aircraft carrier group probably to the Arabian Sea or to the Gulf per se itself. But can you see in India today a willingness or capability that India can perform a role of a soft counterweight in Gulf affairs, pending, being a major naval power, protecting its own interests and sea lanes and trade coming from that area, taken into consideration that India has stated that it is against, does not look with appreciation to the outcome of the Arab Spring that it has produced.
I don't think we've said that, not as India.
I'm talking about the outcome in the sense that it brought to power in many areas fundamentalist movements. The Gulf today is surrounded, if you look at the Arabian Peninsula, the core of interest, economic interest to so many people, surrounded by fundamentalist Iran and fundamentalist Egypt. Egypt's going to be fundamentalist eventually for us, so we take in the worst case scenario. So what role can India play in this? How does India look at this situation?
Well, first, I don't know, and I don't characterize developments in the region maybe quite as starkly as you do. One. But two, I think implicit in your question is India willing to be a geopolitical balancer in the region? Since the balance has shifted. I think from what I said, it should be clear that we see our role as functioning with partners in the region. All partners. And we today have a relationship with Egypt, with the GCC members individually and collectively, with Iran. We work with each of them to try and guarantee these security interests and to further our security interests where we can. Now, we do not think much of external intervention. I think I've said that 3-4 times already, which by logical implication means that we do not see ourselves as an external geopolitical balancer in the region. We see ourselves as part of the region. And that's why when we say 4,000 years we've been together, the region is part of our lives, we are part of the region, we have people there, we look at the intimacy of this relationship. So we cannot come in as though we're here from Mars or from behind some huge oceans far away and say we're going to balance your dealings among yourself. That's not the role we see for ourselves. work with our partners across the region to further our security interests. That will shift. If the balance shifts, if things change, that will change. But that's the joy of diplomacy of work. I mean, that's the joy of it. And we'll do that. Does that answer?
I was talking more just about the soft side of it.
Yes.
About the balance and the responsibility.
Professor Anita.
I think we're not in the business of competing with Pakistan, frankly. We have enough things to do ourselves, and that's not, frankly, that's a sideshow.
My name is Dr. Aditindi, and I'm asking this question in my role as a citizen of the Republic of India. Sir, in order to safeguard India's strategic interests globally, would you, sir, in your capacity as an NSA, advise the government of India to conduct an ASAT test before the window of opportunity is gone, just like the nuclear?
There's a lot of assumptions in there. That an ASAT test is in our interest, that the window is going to close, all kinds of assumptions in there. I'm not sure that I share those.
Thank you, Shri. Connected to the post-2014 drawdown in Afghanistan, I have a suggestion. I would appreciate your comments. Everybody's talking of development and so on in Afghanistan. Monies have been promised, nothing is coming. Do you envisage a role to the Peace Building Commission of the UN, because that is the body under which India, of course, swears by? They can ensure that actually the money comes in and development takes place, and very quickly. The refrain in this entire seminar has been India, with its global and economic power, is not doing enough. It's not asserting itself enough. Of course, we have clarified what we are doing. Perhaps we need to improve our PR, and your former service would do a little more in this regard so that people know what we are doing and we are not too quiet about it. Thank you.
Well, it's not our way to beat our own drum, blow our own trumpet. No, about post-2014, I think development is all very well, but it needs a certain amount of security, and it needs basically a political envelope within which it can take place. So I think in all the discussion that I see there's a lot of discussion of the security transition, of what responsibility is where, what stays on from ISAF and so on. There's some discussion of development. There's almost no discussion of what is probably the most important, which is to actually build a stable and democratic political process, to build a political center in Afghanistan, which actually enables you to do the other good things that you're mentioning, and that enables this transition to be as smooth and as painless as possible for the Afghan people and for the neighborhood. So that's something which I think is where the real priority should be. And that's slightly different from which means is best. Do you do it through the UN? Do you do it bilaterally? Do you do it only through the Afghan government? Do you do it? How do you do it? You know, that's the means part of it. But I think the end is far more important, and the critical element to me is the politics of it, getting the politics and the political transition of it right. If we can do that, then the rest of it will follow, I think.
Last question.
Thank you, sir, for speech and coming here. I'm Mohammad Hassan Khani, coming from Iran, Imam Sadiq University. A very short, just a short question about the Iranian nuclear issue. I wonder, have you ever considered to play a more active role when it comes to Iranian nuclear issue? So far, we have seen an observer just distancing from the scene, and this is something I think India has the potential to play a more active role, and I'm talking about the initiative, something like the Turkish initiatives a few years ago. I remember when the Brazilian and Turkish president were there in Tehran conference to making that initiative, my first feeling was that India is absent. So have you ever considered a more active role to play? Maybe hosting the next round of the discussions. Now you're talking about...
I think they've set the dates now, I think, in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the next ones. I mean, it's coming.
If you want, I'll tell the government of India that one very important and influential Iranian thinks that we should host the next, and we'll make up our mind. Yeah? No, I mean, you know, the fact is that so far, at least, there are several processes going on. You mentioned one was the Brazilian-Turkish initiative, there's a P5+1, there's a whole series of bilateral discussions going on. There's what Iran is doing with the IAEA. You want more? If you think it'll work, tell us. We'll see. We'll look at the idea.
You're a student of history. You remember George Canning, British Foreign Secretary, warning European powers to lay off the Americans? He said, I call the new world into existence to redress the balance of the old. What are we doing, NSA Saab, to redress the balance of the old in our area?
If we were to redress the balance of the old, we'd keep our mouth shut and do our work.
I answered it more politely in this way.
Yeah, but you are doing that.